Okay, so the Unified Command issued us this chart here the other day, and it shows how the alternate channels are going to work. So if you look at the collapsed bridge, which is right in here, and the Dali ship is right here, they created that channel for us the other day, which is this one right over here. It's up here by Solar's Point, and it's the last section of the bridge before you hit the truss section. So the entire red area here is the truss section that fell. And if you remember that video I showed you the other night of that barge being the very first ship that was going through this new channel that they set up with all of these new markers, and I showed you it was actually coming through the bridge this way and out into towards the Chesapeake. And if you remember that last viewpoint in the video where it shows, you can see the Dali in the background there with all of the truss in the water, that was shot from over here looking this way. Okay. And I pointed out to you the other day, and I stand correct, a lot of people tried to correct me and say it was 11 meters. It's 11 feet deep right here is your clearance. This is an 11-foot draft is what this allows. It doesn't give you much. Basically some essential barges and a few other vessels. Many of your cargo ships are not going to make this at all. But there's your depth there, 11 feet. It's 264 feet wide and 95 feet tall. So yesterday they opened up this other channel here in another section to the south of where the ship crashed. And you can see it goes right over here. And this one has a depth of 14 feet and a width of 280 feet and a height of 124 feet. I'm just a little nervous about how close they are to these. This is where the power poles are. Here's one right here. And you can see the lines if you look really carefully there. And then especially this other one over here, this buoy is really close to this one. So, man, these guys are going to have to be real careful going through here and making these tight turns like this. So the other evening when I put up that video about the very first ship to pass through the new alternate channel, a number of you tried to correct me on my 11 feet, and you were saying, no, Jeff, it's not 11 feet, it's 11 meters. And, like I've said before, I try to do everything based on fact whenever I can, and I try to double check. And my numbers are correct. It is 11 feet. It is not 11 meters. So let me show you where I got that information from. And then the people that are wanting to claim that it's 11 meters, I want you to show me where you got that from. The first place that I got it from is right here, directly from the Unified Command on the Key Bridge response. And this was their update 5 from a few days ago. And I was on Monday on the 1st of April. And no, this is not an April Fool's joke. But when you scroll down here and they're talking about the new temporary channel right there, it says right here, this temporary channel has a controlling depth of 11 feet. A 264 horizontal clearance, and a vertical clearance of 95 feet. The other place that I went to check here, of course, is the official chart, the depth chart of the bay. And here's your Francis Scott Key Bridge right here. This is where the collision occurred, right in the center of the Federal Channel. And then if you look over to here towards Solar's Point, somewhere around right here is where they made that access point. And you can see the depth right there is showing 10 feet, over here 10 feet, but it's probably somewhere like right over in here where the depth would then be 11 feet. And then likewise, where I showed you on the chart, the secondary channel over here is going to be like probably right here, because here you can see 12 feet, 13 feet, and so 14 feet is what they quoted. So everything jives. And here is my third piece of corroborating evidence. The chart that they released to us yesterday clearly shows 14 feet on the southern alternate channel and 11 feet depth on the northern alternate channel. So this is not to accommodate the bigger ships. It's really meant for the essentials like these barges. So for example, here's the Chesapeake 1000, the big crane from Don John, that was sent to the site of the bridge collapse there in Baltimore. And if we look at its dimensions to see, will this fit through like the northern channel, the length is 191 feet. The width is 101 feet, so it should fit. It'll be reasonably close, so they have to be very careful. But let's look at the draft. So it can be between 8 feet and 9 feet. So this, and most barges are typically around 8 or 9 feet anyway. So pretty much any barge should be able to get through there okay, and any of the smaller, like the tugboats. And as long as your draft is below 11 feet, you should be okay passing through that channel. Another question that comes up a lot too is a lot of people, especially the conspiracy theory people, were wondering, it just seems too convenient. How did the boat all of a sudden turn right into the pillars like that on the bridge. It just seems like it had to have been under control of somebody, or maybe somebody hacked in, or what. Okay, well, some of you might know Sal over at What's Going On with Shipping, and he had mentioned, I think, the other day too, about the flowing of waters from Curtis Bay. Remember, there's a channel here. There's a channel here, and there's a channel there, and sometimes currents can affect one to the other. So here's what I'm talking about here. So here's the Fort McHenry channel that the Dali ship was coming down, and this is the area where it ran into trouble. But you can see the Curtis Bay channel is coming from over here. And you knew this was coming, folks. My own brand of high tech again. So the Navy has their sonar and LiDAR, but only Jeff has the movable Dali. I think I'm going to trademark this thing. Yes, that's right, folks. My famous AI rendering here. So here's the Dali.
Well, hello.
Look who's here.
Dali. This is Louis.
Hello, Louis.
Dali.
And the Dali originally was supposed to be going sort of this way and straight out the channel, out the middle of the bridge. Right here is the center of the channel. Yeah, there's your center of the bridge right there. So it was supposed to go this way. But instead, what happened was somewhere back around here, probably within a couple of minutes, it turned 15 degrees or so. Very short. It's not a huge turn. And then it came this way and just, boom, missed it. See, it doesn't take much of a turn to make it go from there to there. See that? Okay, so what made it do that? So if we back it up to right here or so, and here's your Curtis Bay, and you have the channel here, and the currents could be going like this. So one hypothesis is that maybe the currents hit the back of the Dali ship right here and make it just turn just enough, you know, maybe combined with some wind, did the same thing. And remember, it doesn't have to turn a whole lot to make it go that far off course to be, boom, hit right in there like that. And that's where its final resting place is. Here's a close-up shot of it here. And you can see it was supposed to go there, and it doesn't require a whole lot of turning to make it go there. See that? Boom. A lot of people will look at that original video and they will think that it was purposely turned. And I can't imagine any sane pilot doing that on purpose. And keep in mind, most of the conspiracy people don't know there was 2 pilots, and there's also a whole crew that would have stopped him. Hey, you know, one other thing that people forget too is that they all assume, hey, it had backup generator, it should never have lost power. Well, you know what? The backup generators are not instantaneous. They can often take 45 seconds to a minute to turn on and get everything up and running. This is not an instantaneous switchover. It doesn't just go, ooh, power's off, and then boom, automatic. This does take a finite amount of time. And then also, once you regain power, how do we know whether the ship was going fast enough to put enough force on that rudder so that when you're turning that rudder, is it going to turn in time? And also remember that these large shipping containers have a huge turning radius. A large rectangular shipping container, think about it. Think how high that thing sticks up out of the water. If it's got no power and it's just floating, what is it? It's a sailboat. It's just a giant sail up there. So any amount of wind is going to work against you, and you're going to be pushed in the general direction of the prevailing winds. Now, another question that I've gotten, like literally boatloads, pun intended, of that this week. A lot of you were asking about these tugboats. They were like, some people didn't even think that tugboats had been used at all, but they were. And we'll get into that in a second. But people were saying, well, where were the tugboats? Why didn't they call for tugboats? Why don't the tugboats take them all the way out the ocean there, you know, past the bridge so that it gets out of there safely? Well, I can imagine that this subject will probably come up during the investigation, and the ports are going to probably start looking into this and second guessing themselves about, should we have the major container ships like that pulled out by the tugboats? Okay, so to answer that, we want to look over here at the port, and I want to take a look. First of all, where are the tugboats? Well, my best hypothesis is that this is them right here. This is where they're stored. See, that looks like the tugs right there. Okay, and then this is where the Dali took off from, right here at the Seagirt Marine Terminal. So you can see all of the gantry cranes, and it was probably underneath one of these gantry cranes. And then the tugboats come over and they grab the boat here, and they pull it away from the dock, and they help it turn around. And then as they guide it around and it's facing straight down the channel now, it then becomes, so you zoom out a little bit. Once the ship is over here and facing this way and coming down here now, it's a straight shot down the channel. All they have to do is head out the bridge. So the tugs pretty much say goodbye. Maybe they go back to their resting place. I don't know if they sit around and wait or what they do. But at this point, we can assume that the tugs were still back over here. Now, how far is this? So from this point where the tugs are stored, it's just over 3 miles. It's 3.39 miles to the bridge. And the ship ran into problems somewhere like right around here or so. Remember, it took the Dali ship 1 hour to get from here on the dock to turn around and come all the way down here to where the bridge is. 1 full hour. If you're over here and you put out a mayday call to the tugs and they're way back here and the tugs can only go 15 knots at best, you know, it's going to take 20 minutes or more for a tug to even get to where you're at. And by that time, it's too late. So that's where the problem was, where people said they did not ask for tugs. But yes, they indeed did ask for tugs. Because as you recall, the NTSB released the source of what was going on. So at about 1:25 on the dot here is probably when they started to see all of the problems, because there's all of their alarms going off there. So it says here, about a minute and a half later, the ship's pilot made a general VHF radio call for tugs in the vicinity of the Dali. So, and the MDTA data from around this time indicated the Pilot Association dispatcher phoned the MDTA duty officer regarding the blackout. So they did call for tugs. A lot of people assumed that maybe there wasn't a call. I don't know where people got that from. I don't know why you would just assume a call wasn't made for tugs. These guys are sharp and they know what to do when certain situations arise. And it looks to me like they at least did everything they could. But you can see there's just no way a tug is going to get there in time. Make sure you keep sending in your questions here on the Baltimore Bridge Collapse, because we do want to address that and more analysis on the next video. I like to keep them short. And we'll of course be watching for any new evidence released by the Unified Command. Well, I'm going to continue to monitor everything here for you on the Francis Scott Key Bridge Collapse. And in the meantime, you can check this video out right here, which is on the FIU Bridge Collapse. That was one of my best engineering videos yet. So thank you so much for tuning in again today, and stay tuned for the next one, and we'll see you on that next one.